You're strapped into the McLaren, tires screaming, mirrors showing nothing but empty tarmac behind you, and your engineer is telling you to hold station, to protect the car in front, to accept the plan. But you don't believe the plan. You believe the tires. You key the radio and say something no one on the pit wall expected to hear from a defending world champion who hadn't won a race in 11 starts: I will pull out a 10-second gap. With no tires. Then you do exactly that. This is the story of the afternoon. Lando Norris stopped defending his title, and started attacking his future. Stories like this one, a champion rediscovering himself in real time, on live radio, in front of the whole world, are exactly why this channel exists. Every subscriber who joins right now becomes part of tracking this comeback as it unfolds race by race, and honestly, that's what keeps this kind of storytelling alive. If you want to be here for whatever Norris does next, this is the moment to become part of it. November 2025, São Paulo. Norris crosses the line as the youngest British world champion in Formula One history, just 25 years old, the culmination of a title fight that went down to the final laps of the season. It was the kind of victory that gets replayed for years, earned, not gifted, forged through pressure that would have broken a lesser driver. Then cut hard to 2026. New regulations. A new car, the MCL 40. And a grid where almost nobody, Norris included, immediately understood how to unlock the new machinery. The sport had effectively reset itself, and reset with it every driver's relationship to their own confidence. The paddock, never shy about writing a narrative before it's finished, had already started drafting one, the champion who couldn't defend his crown, the driver who peaked in 2025 and was already being spoken about in the past tense. It's a familiar shape in this sport. A title win followed by a quiet season gets rewritten as a ceiling rather than a beginning. The number hanging over the entire story was brutal in its simplicity: 8 months, 11 races, 0 wins. What does a champion do when the car underneath him stops matching the number on the side of it? The Hungaroring was never going to be a normal weekend. This was the final round before the summer break, the last chance for any team on the grid to make a statement before 3 weeks of silence and speculation. McLaren chose this exact moment to gamble, debuting the first major tranche of their 2026 upgrade package under the brightest possible spotlight. If it failed here, the team would enter the break with the fated champion narrative fully intact, left to be picked apart by the wider paddock during the downtime. The first signal came in FP3, Norris fastest, the first time all season a McLaren had topped a session with that kind of authority. Qualifying delivered the twist nobody saw coming. Norris took his first pole position of 2026, and it was the first pole from a non-Mercedes car all season, breaking a run that had defined the entire first half of the year. What made it stranger, and more dramatic, was Norris's own admission afterward: the team had changed almost nothing on the car between practice and qualifying. The gain, he explained, came from reading a shift in wind direction through sectors 2 and 3, instinct and feel, not a setup sheet. He edged out Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari by roughly 12 thousandths of a second, a margin small enough to feel almost unfair. Before a single racing lap had been driven, belief had already started to return. Then the lights went out, and the lead went with them. Norris ran wide at turn 2, and teammate Oscar Piastri capitalized instantly, taking the lead on the opening lap. It was the emotional gut punch of the whole weekend. The pole sitter, the man carrying the comeback narrative on his shoulders, was suddenly running second in his own story. What followed was over 30 laps of a McLaren pinned behind a McLaren, Norris with pace in hand but nowhere to use it on a track where overtaking is a puzzle with almost no solution. Inside McLaren, there's an unofficial principle that governs moments exactly like this one: team strategy bends to protect whichever of the two cars is leading on track. Internally, it's been nicknamed Papaya Rules. It's a principle the team has wrestled with for years, one that's caused friction between these exact two drivers before, and Hungary was about to test it again in real time. As Piastri closed in on his pit window, the tension around it built lap by lap. On lap 32, Norris asked to pit before the race-leading Piastri, and McLaren refused, choosing to protect the driver ahead on the road rather than gift Norris the undercut. Norris didn't take it quietly. "You mean you won't let me? I'm miles faster," he shot back on open radio. This wasn't a driver sulking. This was a champion questioning the machine that was supposed to be protecting him, forced to decide in real time whether he trusted the pit wall or trusted what his own tires were telling him, lap after lap. Then came the line that decided everything. Right on the tail of the still leading Piastri, tires degrading, Norris told race engineer Will Joseph, "I'll pull out a 10-second gap with no tires." Nobody on the pit wall sounded certain he could back it up. But he was right. Piastri, released from his own pit stop into traffic, ran into trouble with Carlos Sainz's Williams in the first sector, contact that didn't end his race outright but bent the entire complexion of it, costing him time and track position he would never fully recover. Norris, meanwhile, was finding pace in clear air that nobody expected, and by the time the strategies cycled through, the gap he'd promised was exactly the gap that existed. Afterward, his own words captured it best: he felt like a driver who suddenly understood his car on an instinctive level again, the pace simply there for him to keep extending, lap after lap, whenever he asked for it. Then, on lap 56 of 70, the race delivered its exclamation point. Piastri, running second at the time, stopped out on track with a gearbox failure, his afternoon of frustration ending not with a checkered flag but with a walk back to the garage. It's worth being precise about what this retirement did and didn't do. By that point in the race, Norris was already roughly 15 seconds clear. The race had already been decided by pace alone, not by misfortune. McLaren racing director Andrea Stella made the same point afterward: even without the retirement, both McLaren cars had been fighting at the front all afternoon, proof that the upgrade, not luck, was the real story of the weekend. This wasn't a gifted victory. It was an earned one that happened to get an exclamation point. And then came the moment the title of this video is actually about. On the podium, Norris didn't just celebrate a first win of the season, he drew a direct line from the team's work that weekend to what comes next, framing it as just the beginning rather than a one-off release of pressure. The contrast he drew was the real headline: he no longer felt the weight of defending a title, he felt the confidence of a driver who already has won. That distinction matters more than it sounds. A champion protecting what he already has tends to drive scared, managing risk instead of chasing it. A champion who trusts himself drives to attack, the way Norris drove through the second half of Sunday's race. Analysts, motorsport.com among them, specifically flagged this shift in tone as something new for 2026, not just a result on a page, but a visible change in mentality from the driver himself. The numbers, though, keep the emotion honest. Norris sits fifth in the championship, roughly 50 points back from leader Kimi Antonelli. On its own, that gap looks steep. But context shrinks it. 3 months earlier, the picture looked completely different, with Hamilton running second in the standings, George Russell surging, and Red Bull languishing as low as 11th in the constructors' fight. Antonelli's 6 wins this season have come with their own cracks showing: 2 lead retirements, and costly errors in Austria and Silverstone that are estimated to have cost him somewhere in the region of 25 points. None of that erases his lead. But it does mean the title fight is far from settled, and a McLaren that's finally working changes the math for absolutely everyone left in it. Now comes the pause that changes everything, or nothing. McLaren has 3 full weeks before the sport resumes, 3 weeks to keep developing an upgrade package that just turned an 11-race drought into a statement win, 3 weeks in which every other garage on the grid will be studying exactly what McLaren found in Hungary. There's no race weekend to hide behind during a summer break, no session to quietly bury a bad Sunday. The next race is Zandvoort, the Dutch Grand Prix, landing in August, and it will be the moment the entire grid looks at the McLaren garage differently than it did before Hungary. This wasn't a one-race fluke to be judged on a Sunday and forgotten by Monday. It's a signal that the second half of the season may look nothing like the first. This wasn't just a race win. It was a champion finding his voice again, live, on team radio, under pressure, with the whole paddock watching and doubting in equal measure. Lando Norris didn't reignite his championship today. He reminded everyone it was never really gone. And if this is genuinely where the second half of 2026 begins, you won't want to be catching up on it after the fact. You'll want to have been here from the moment it turned, watching it build race by race as McLaren rolls into Zandvoort and the title fight gets rewritten in real time.